Hi, I'm Sheetal Dube. I'm a user experience consultant, and I'm here to talk about a heart patient I met recently. She called herself the bag lady. So, a little background about the project in which I met her. The project involved designing medical devices for heart patients, and my role was really to make sure that the device is easy to use for the patients who need them. So for this project, because easy to use is a pretty abstract concept, I used the standard methodologies of observation and interviewing to really find out more about these patients. I met a lot of patients across the country. They were selected based on their demographics, their health conditions, and how they managed their health on a daily basis. And as a first step to the process, I went and visited these patients at their homes. And the first step was really to understand their familiarity with technology. Can they use a cell phone for text messaging? If they have a problem with technology, who helps them out? And also try to understand how they manage their health in terms of, do they take their blood pressure themselves? Do they have caregivers? And all this data is really going into making the product easy to use for heart patients. So with this background, I would like to move to Los Angeles, where I actually met the bag lady. And I was scheduled to meet 10 heart patients there. The first day was pretty normal, went by the roster, met everybody. The second day, which I believe was Jan 18th, it was the last interview of the day, and we were, pulling up in front of the patient's home. And my colleague, who was more familiar with Los Angeles, was a little, concerned about the neighborhood. So he told me, why don't you call her and, ask her if we are in the right house. And I did that, and, she switched on the lights. We entered the house, and the house was a little different. I mean, it had a lot of stuff, and it seemed like a lot of gadgets that probably didn't work, and a little chaos around. So any which way we started talking, I explained to her why we were there and what we were going to do, and she was very receptive. She was very open about the whole discussion we were supposed to have. And I asked her to tell me something about herself, and she said, I'm the bag lady. And I paused, and she said, I'm the lady you probably see on the road collecting a lot of junk. And she was very comfortable with who she was, and we proceeded with the rest of the interview. I asked her about how often she had the medication, and pretty standard questions that I needed to go through, and made more observations. And then we moved to the next part of the interview, which was really trying to show her the medical device concepts that I really had. And she looked at them, she held them, she thought out aloud in terms of how they would work. And I asked her the big question in terms of, what do you think of these concepts, and how do you think you would use them? And she paused, she thought, and she says, this reminds me of shoes. There are shoes that I like, and there are shoes that I need. And that kind of gave me the answer, because she wanted to tell me that, this is probably the shoe that I like but may not need. And she thought a little bit more, and then she said, can you give me something that will make me stand up and do the jitterbug? And really seeing her enthusiasm and thinking about this ideal concept really got me too excited too, because this is exactly the thing that I wanted to do, right? Find out what would really excite these patients. And while I was still taking down the notes and trying to understand what she really needs, I was trying to think of what were the big learnings, because at that point I was kind of overwhelmed with all the emotions that were going in. And the first thing that I learned really was, like, as a patient, her need for the device was not a physical object. It was the feeling that the object would give her. It was no more about the shape or the size or anything. The second I realized was, like, she could use the device I gave her, but it did not meet her needs. And many a times in projects that become a little complex, easy to use becomes a distraction from the main goal of the project. And the third thing I realized was that people who live on the streets have needs pretty similar to ours. And when I entered a house, I kind of had some questions in my mind in terms of how this interview would go. But at that point, I was just so happy and relieved. in terms of everything that I had learned. And all through my stay in LA, this had an impact on me. And I had my little mantra which said, if the bag lady does not need it, it's time to go back to the drawing board. Thank you.